buying in the US real estate market can be a very, very rewarding experience. Many people in the US have made absolute fortunes buying into the US real estate market. But you, as a non-resident foreigner, need to take into consideration a number of factors before entering this market. So here are 10 things I think you need to consider as a non-resident foreigner before buying into this market. Number one, choose your area carefully. The US is almost, you can consider the US like Europe. You don't just buy into Europe, you buy into a country in Europe. And the same in the US, you buy into one of the states in the US. Certain states have higher taxes than others. So in New York and California, taxes are quite high, whereas in a state like Texas, taxes are a lot lower. Some states in the US have death estate taxes and some don't. Also in the US, some markets are performing well, some markets perform not so well. What you also have to take into consideration is this. In the US, although it's generally pro-tenant, there are some states in the US where it's easier to evict a tenant for non-payment than in other states. Number two, the Americans in general like new property. They're a little bit like the Cypriots. I made a video on Cyprus where I said property, as soon as you buy property in Cyprus, it starts to depreciate. This is a similar theme in the US. And indeed, I've seen many foreigners who buy into these 1970s condos in, let's say, Miami, and the US, they don't love these at all. So if you're looking to resell, it can be very, very difficult to resell in the US market. Also, for example, mansions out of town, which were very, very popular with the older generation, are not so popular with the millennials. So if you buy one of these, you may find it difficult to sell in the future. Also consider the US. In the US, people are not so attached to their properties as they are in Europe. So people tend to move where jobs are. Number three, and this is quite similar to the UK actually, choose your school district very, very carefully. So in the US, it's very important where you buy a property in terms of how near good schools are. And this is similar to the UK. So in an area where there are a lot of good schools, you may find if you rent out to a tenant, they're prepared to pay a lot higher rent and you can get a better yield. And you're more likely to have capital appreciation as well. I know a lot of you watching maybe from Scandinavia and the rest of Europe other than the UK find this a little taboo, but viewers from the UK will probably understand where I'm coming from. Anyway, point number four, the US housing market is amazingly data driven. You can literally find anything you want about a property in the US. So you can find the individual owners, you can find what taxes have been paid on this property, as well as location, the normal things like location and what it's sold for in the past, as you can in the UK. So from a European perspective, it's quite amazing that you can find all these statistics, and from an Asian perspective as well, I should say, statistics on a property in the US. And indeed, even people in the UK who are used to finding a lot of data on property websites like the Rightmove, Zoopla, etc., will be amazed at how much more data you can find in the US. But one little downside is that it's very difficult to actually find a deal because there's so much relevant data out there. All the work is done for you. Number five, if any of you watched my video on New York, you'll know where I'm coming from. In the US, you often do not buy as an individual. You can set yourself up as a limited liability company, and indeed you may structure this in certain ways to avoid paying high taxes. So you need to find a good lawyer and a good accountant to set yourself up in the right way so that you pay minimal taxes depending on your circumstances. Number six, oh my word, in the US, they're so used to suing people. It's apparently they're saying 1/3 of businesses have been sued since they've started. It's incredible. It's something taboo to, especially to Europeans, but in the US it's very, very normal to sue. So if you're a landlord, let's say, and your tenant falls down the stairs or has a minor accident and it's not your fault, in Europe you may think, well, why should they be able to sue? But in the US this is normal. So you need to take out liability insurance. This is absolutely fundamental, especially if you're renting out to a tenant. Number 7, in the US, there are many banks that don't do things like accept online transfers from abroad. There are many banks in the US that insist that when they contact you, you have a US SIM card. So you need to choose your bank carefully that will cater to all your requirements, because many banks don't, and even many of the big banks don't. So do your research carefully. Number 8, when you buy a property in the US, beware of what the property taxes and what is called homeowners association dues are, because in many cases this can eat into 3 or 4 months of your rental. So it's so important you do that research. Number 9, getting a mortgage in the US can be an absolute nightmare. Because many US-based lenders, they only look at your credit history in the US, and what happens is often you'll get either rejected for the mortgage. You're going to have to often put a larger lump sum down, so you get less of a loan, or it can take a lot longer, or in many cases you're going to pay a higher interest rate than a local. So you also need to take that into consideration. The US is very, very focused on the US people who are buying. And you as a non-resident foreigner will have a disadvantage in that. So you've got to do your homework very, very carefully. Number 10, this is also very, very important. When you come to sell a property in the US, unless it's an exceptional circumstance where the property is less than $300,000 and the person buying it from you is going to use it for their own residence and not as an investment, the IRS will often keep 15% of the proceeds of your sales until you fill out income tax and capital gains tax declaration. And the IRS is actually really, really inefficient. So this can take many months. It can even take years in certain circumstances. So get yourself a good accountant as well to sort this out. Now, I don't want to put you off buying in the US because as a non-resident foreigner, because there are literally a lot of rewards to it. But you really do your homework carefully. Look at these 10 points. I'm sure potentially there are 1 or 2 other points. So if you've had experience in buying in the US, please do contact me and let me know what happened. Even put some comments down in the comments section so that perhaps other people can benefit from your experience. Anyway, it's been good having you. Thanks ever so much for watching, and I'll see you soon on the next video.